Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 322 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is the power of hope. Our quote of the day comes to us from Christopher Reeves. Once you choose hope, anything's possible. Don't forget to subscribe to our show and leave us a 5-star review so we can spread our No Quit message to a much wider audience. And be on the lookout for something that we'll be promoting. Connect 5 and support 10. I'm really excited to bring you today's episode. Our guest today, Christian Edwards, is a good friend of mine and someone who shares his story openly to inspire and bring hope to others. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Christian, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks for having me, brother.
I appreciate it. As you know, the first question is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
100%, at least one person a day. That's my personal mission. My personal goal is to make an impact because I led a life for so long, living in darkness, living a lonely life, not feeling love, not feeling hope. And people came into my life to share that, to share their hope and love. And it is my goal, my effort, my calling to now do that for others. So God willing, we go forth and impact at least one.
I love it. So touching on that, you and I got the chance to meet back in September through one of Steve Weatherford's coaching programs. And obviously we've established a relationship on the side. But I wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind touching on your no quit story, because I think personally, it's been something that's impacted me. And I know, as you shared with your first answer of positively impacting at least one person, you've done that to so many of us within that group. So wanted to ask if you wouldn't mind sharing that story to our listeners as well.
Yeah, absolutely. My no quit story is really my entire testimony. I was a guy, I grew up playing basketball. Basketball was my life, man. I played at St. Benedict's Prep. You're familiar with that school. And I found my identity through basketball. So I didn't have all these ambitions of playing in the NBA. Would it have been great? Absolutely. But was I realistic about it? Yeah, I just wanted to play in college, get a free education, graduate with a degree in criminal justice, become a cop like my dad, or maybe a federal job. My father was a cop in Newark, New Jersey, and I just looked up to him. So I wanted to follow in his footsteps. So my junior year of high school, my identity got taken away from me when I got injured and I wasn't able to play anymore. So I wound up having 4 back surgeries, first one being at the age of 16 years old. And after my first surgery, I got hooked on painkillers and it turned into a 14-year addiction. Like I said, 4 back surgeries, and I was in a dark, dark place up until the age of 30. And my no quit story is more so I have to give glory to 2 people, one being God, because I didn't have a relationship with God at the time. And this is what led me to that relationship, but also the woman who I'm married to now. And I don't think I ever speak to you off the record without mentioning her. And that's my wife, Lucy. She stood in the gap and she saw me as somebody who needed that love, that hope that I just talked about. I had alienated everybody in my life. And quite frankly, I had no strength of my own to draw from. I was trapped in my addiction. And I realize now it was the voice of God that was speaking to me saying, you're going to die in your addiction. I knew there was just going to be a morning that I wasn't going to wake up. And as much as I was in that darkness and a part of me didn't want to wake up morning to morning, there was a part of me that said, no, there's so much more to me. There's something in me. I know that this isn't my life. God didn't create me for this. So my no quit story was through the leading of Lucy, who, like I said, stood in the gap. She led me to a relationship with the Lord. And this is absolutely the short version of it. You've heard the longer version of my testimony, but when I surrendered to Jesus Christ and made him my personal savior, and just like the Bible says, man, I got filled with the Holy Spirit. I felt the love, the peace, the joy of the Lord, and I got radically transformed. So my no quit story is not giving up on myself, but absolutely it's Lucy not giving up on me, who I was just a friend. Keep in mind, we weren't married. I was an unsaved junkie at the time. So there's no way she was going to marry me at the time. But she knew that God was trying to get to me through her, and she was obedient to the Lord and just loving on me to get me to him.
Mm. I've heard that story in many different ways, longer version, shorter version. But one of the things you touched on, and you said it, I believe, 2 or 3 times on this show, is the word hope. And at a point in your life, you didn't have hope. And then all of a sudden, through Lucy, through God, and I know through some other people, but wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind just briefly touching on what the word hope means to you, but I think maybe more importantly, how you can bring hope to others.
Hope, when I think of the word hope, the first thing I actually think of is hopelessness, just that feeling of emptiness, feeling that there's a ceiling on your life, no matter what it is. I've since done a lot of ministry work, and I've been able to speak with and get to know people in all walks of life, whether you have a lot of money or a little bit of money. Hopelessness is a real thing, and people put these ceilings on their life a lot of times it's self-limiting beliefs. They put it there themselves, or we are conditioned to think we can only reach so far. A young kid growing up in the projects, they're conditioned to think that they could only live in the projects and maybe not even get outside their neighborhood their entire life. So hope to me is realizing that the the ways of the world and the things that we've been conditioned to think about not being expansive, about not being able to fulfill our true callings, about not being able to achieve greatness. Hope to me is understanding and believing that those things are real and those things are attainable.
I love that. And I think the second thing you said, which is not only understanding but believing, and I think that is something that is so powerful, not only during this pandemic we've been going through since the March of 2020, but also in 2021. We need to believe not only in ourselves, but we need to believe in the goodness in other people. And I think it's a very powerful message. A fun question we ask everybody is, if you had to define yourself, but you could only choose one word, what word would you choose?
Mm. Now in my life, I would say intentional. That would be my word right now. And actually, um, I just I just discovered more of the impact that word has about being intentional, because I think part of my self-limiting beliefs was thinking that I was a good father, I was a good husband, I was effectively serving the Lord in ministry. But I've realized that I could be intentional about not just being good, but being my best at those things. So that's what I'm committed to now, being intentional in every area of my life.
I think it's an incredibly powerful word. A good friend of mine, Jeff Forrester, he talks about that, and he's been saying that for the last probably year or so. And it's with the same context that you shared of being intentional with everything you do. It doesn't mean in any way being perfect and never having a bad day or having a bad morning, but it's about being intentional with your actions. It's about being intentional. And for me, I take it a step further, is where you are, be there. So for example, if I'm with my kids, be there. If you're at work, be there. So I'm really glad you touched on that. One of the things, as you know, we often discuss, and I truly believe in the power of books. And I'm curious if there's anything that you've read recently, or perhaps you're reading something now that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Well, as you know, I have an 8-month-old, so my go-to book every morning is A is for Ark. So teaching my little boy about all the animals on Noah's Ark. But actually, the book that I'm in right now, as recommended by you, is Pivot and Go by David Nurse. I heard him on your podcast. I heard him on Steve Weatherford's podcast, and I thought it was powerful. I thought Um, I obviously what he has in that book is going to dive a little deeper into what he shared on the podcast, and I'm about halfway through right now. It's a 29-day journey, and it's good. I'm about halfway through right now.
So have you always been into books, or has that been something more recently that you've really jumped back into or jumped into?
Man, I hated books my entire life up until uh, I became a follower of Christ and I started digging into the Bible. And that's really the book that I'm in the Bible every single day, as you know. Um, on the personal side, how my daily devotionals go, and how I start my mornings. But I hated reading, man. I don't think I've read a full book in my life in its entirety. And if there's any like high school teachers or middle school teachers that hear this, like this is just facts, man. I didn't read a book until uh, I was at least the age of 30 years old. I I just didn't like to read, and it's not like I have any learning disabilities. I just never like to sit down and read. I don't know if I get too fidgety or what, but I started digging into the Bible and I was like, wow, this is good. And it spoke to me every day. So then I started digging into other books. And now I love to read because there's so much fulfillment in it. And I'm just filling my tool bag with other items. And I'm able to read a book like pivot and go and just continue to fill my tool bag, think about these things every single day and keep it moving.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when we talk about reading, and obviously I asked that question because it's something that I believe in and something that a lot of the guests have spoken about, the power of books and how certain books have really impacted them. But I also think when it comes to reading, it's something that you need to really find for yourself. And what I mean by that is I can't say to you, all right, Christian, you need to read 2 books a month and you have to do it and this is how you have to do it, because that becomes more demanding and becomes more something like school, as opposed to when you really enjoy something. And you obviously spoke about the Bible and how you got into it, but it's usually one book or one author that gets somebody into reading and really enjoying it. So I'm glad you touched on that. If you could fast forward 20 years, where do you want to be 20 years from now?
20 years, I love to be the director, owner, operator of what my vision is. And I ultimately want to have what's called a hope center. And it's ironic. I didn't know you're going to go this route with it. And we talked about hope so much already. But I want to have a facility where it's a school, where it's an orphanage, where it's the go to place for resources for people to find love and hope. And like I said, I've met so many people, and a lot of times you would never know it by looking at them. You would never know it with even a 2 minute conversation. But when you get in the weeds with these people, you realize they don't feel loved. They don't have a hope beyond what they see around them. And I want to be able to provide that because for me, I realized that I found that when my wife Lucy led me to the Lord, and I received like I was in darkness until I received that love of Christ, and it just blew my mind. I not only had no relationship with God before the age of 30, I questioned whether or not he existed. And the fact that I had injured my back and got it hooked on pills and it turned into this big drug addiction, I would I would literally cry out to God and curse out God, middle fingers in the air, saying, I hate you if you're real. And then here I am, the love and faithfulness that he has for us, his creation, where when I was ready on my terms, he was still there. He was faithful. He was ready to just wrap me up in his arms and fill me with his love. So my goal, my mission, my calling in life is to enable other people to feel that. So 20 years from now, if I could have a whole hope center where, and possibly in every major city, every country in the world, um, man, that would just fill my cup.
I love that, and I did not know that specific name of it, but I think it fits in so many ways from what we spoke about before, and not to rehash it, but the word hope is just so powerful, and when you defined it the way you did, it just made me think differently about people that don't have hope. It's hopelessness, and I'm stuck and I can't get out of this place, and I'm going to be here 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, as opposed to the opposite, where I can be something, I can do something different, I can achieve my goals, my dreams. So I'm really glad that you touched on it the way that you did. A fun question we've been asking probably for the last 15 or so episodes now is based on the famous quote by Jim Rohn: "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." If I could magically put you at a table with any 5 people, dead or alive, and you can level up with those people, who would they be?
Mm. Okay, I listened to the podcast, so I should be ready for this question. Um, Actually, the first 5 people that come to mind would be you, me, our friend Al Hammond, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. Because you, me, and Al, we are Jordan guys, and it would be pretty cool to just sit there and see LeBron's reaction when we're just kind of praising Michael Jordan. But that's the one in fun. But realistically, somebody I like to model my life after, obviously Jesus, but we won't count Jesus for this conversation. But the Apostle Paul, who is just an absolute beast in the Bible, who endured more than during his ministry than most people do in their entire lives. And yeah, he's been an inspiration to me. So I would say him, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln. I'm thinking now, the first Christian martyr, Stephen, in the book of Acts. He was one of the first deacons of the Christian church, and he was the first Christian martyr. And he, just he got stoned to death. And where his heart was when he got stoned to death, it's like, wow, I want to be there every single day, being able to forgive the ones that are throwing the stones at him. And was that 4? One more. I'm going to say my wife, Lucy, because, I get some separation anxiety when I'm not close to my wife at all times.
Trying to earn some browning points there.
Yep. You know it.
I think both dinners would be unbelievable. And just going back to your first one, I think it would be awesome to have LeBron and MJ together and just literally ask the two of them individually, all right, who's the best and why? So that's awesome.
Yeah, this doesn't sit there and say, yeah, this doesn't leave this table, guys. You could get real with us.
That would be so good and bad in the same way, because I'd want to be like, no, like I heard it from their own mouths. And they'd be like, nope, you can't say anything.
Right.
And I have not answered on the show, but spoiler alert, MLK and Abraham Lincoln are 2 of mine. And Abraham Lincoln is someone that's just unbelievably amazing in so many ways, what he went through, but more importantly, not only the success that he had as the president, but all those failures along the way. So I'm glad that you touched on that. Fun questions we have, as you know, are hot seat questions. And just like I ask everybody, the only request I have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Gotcha.
Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What are you choosing?
Got to be my wife's baked macaroni and cheese. I don't even care if there's anything with it. Just give me that baked macaroni and cheese.
All right, tell Lucy I'm coming for some baked mac and cheese. Favorite smell?
Oh, geez. It's going to be, I don't remember the name of it, but the perfume my wife was wearing the first time I met her, before my wife.
Favorite sport?
Basketball.
All-time favorite team?
In basketball or just in general?
In general.
It's actually the 86 Mets from New Jersey. And I grew up, I feel like every early childhood memory involves the 86 Mets.
One of the greatest teams ever. Favorite movie?
Shoot, man. First thing that pops in my head, it doesn't go along with the godly theme we've placed here, but Goodfellas.
I think they say God in there a couple times.
Yeah.
Favorite author?
Author, I would say A.W. Tozer.
What's the favorite app you have on your phone?
The Bible app, for sure.
What's the background picture on your phone?
It's Lucy. Me and Lucy.
Do you have an all-time favorite book?
Probably by A.W. Tozer. It's a book called The Pursuit of God. If you're a Christian, if you're not a Christian and you just believe God is out there, that's a go-to book. Everybody should read that book.
And do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Um, there's a lot of good ones. I don't even know who said this, and it but this is the first thing that pops into my head is the feeling of falling short is nothing compared to the feeling of stopping short.
Ooh, I've not. I don't think I've heard that one. I like that.
That may be from a pastor. It may have been in a message I heard from somebody, but that one always stuck with me.
No, that's powerful. So the word accountability is something that we've touched on as a company, and I wanted to ask you, what does accountability mean to you, or how do you personally define accountability?
Accountability is being held to a certain standard, and of course, you know, you and I think God has put us in each other's lives to help keep one another accountable. But we are in everything that we do, we should be committed to excellence in every area of our life, no matter what it is. It could be a small task, but we should be committed to excellence. And accountability is making sure that we live up to that excellence. Not saying that we have to be perfect in everything that we do, but we have to strive for excellence, because I want to live out absolutely every calling. I want to live out God's will that He has for my life. So I don't want to give Him 80%. I don't want to give Him 50%. I don't want to give Him 99% in any area of my life. I want to be held accountable by God. I want to be held accountable by my peers to strive for greatness.
I love that, and I love that question because there is no right or wrong answer, and there is no one in essence that's better than the other, because it's another question, just like how do you define yourself in one word that is personal to you. But the word accountability itself, I think, is so important because you can be accountable to yourself, to other people, to a family, and you also have people that are accountable to you. So as I mentioned earlier, since March of 2020, it's been very challenging in so many different ways. And I wanted to ask if there's maybe one or two people that you follow on social media that really put out positive and uplifting material that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
The first one's got to be Steve Weatherford. He's a guy that I started following just like midway through 2020, and God has put me in a place now where I'm actually a coach in his coaching program. He and I have spent a lot of time together, and he is just one of the most motivational human beings on the planet. And he's got a servant's heart. He's personally served me and my family. And what you see on social media with him is what you get in real life. He is the real deal. And I want to honor you for the impact that you're making as far as having a presence. And, you know, we rise by lifting others up. Am I saying that right? Forgive me if I'm not.
Nope, you got it.
We rise by lifting others up. And you are so intentional about spreading positivity. You're so intentional where, as long as I've known you, you've been intentional about that, and you've taken no days off with it. And I'm pretty sure you've had days, you've woken up in the morning and you didn't feel like spreading positivity. There's days where I've seen you and I said, I know he can't be on the mountaintop this long. There's got to be days when he's in the valley. But you, whether it's accountability through others or accountability that you put on yourself, man, you're doing it. So I just want to honor you for that. And man, you inspire me. When seeing you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get those workouts in, spreading positivity, leaving your positivity notes, the book that you wrote, that you're the real deal, man.
I appreciate that. I received that, and I will send you your check in the mail. So thank you for that. For our listeners who'd like to connect with you or follow you on social media, what's the best way for them to do so?
On Instagram, my handle is Christian Edwards 249. The 249 coming from Luke chapter 2, verse 49, where Jesus says, I'm about my Father's business. So I was pretty much against social media up until recently, but I'm using it as a platform to spread that hope and love of Jesus Christ. So Christian Edwards 249.
I love that you shared that piece about you were against social media, because I think it's something that I've often spoke about, which is spreading positivity by muting negativity. And I think there is so much negativity that's all throughout social media, but there's also a ton of negativity on news stations and on the hourly news. But there's also a ton of positive material, and there's some incredibly uplifting stuff that's on social media, in the news, on TV. So I want to honor you for jumping into social media, because I know that you, like so many other people, are doing it for the right reasons, which is to spread your message, the message of God, and what you want to put out there in a positive and uplifting way. And that's something that I truly believe in. Going back to what you said, is we rise by lifting others up. And the amazing thing, and also the difficult thing with social media, is we know who likes our post. We know who comments because we can see it, and it's easy to go ahead and compete with somebody else and say, well, I put out a post today and only 20 people liked it, but Christian put something out and he had 50 people. And if you're competing with people, obviously that's a tough game. But what I always say, and what I truly believe in, and I know it's the same thing for you, is you don't know who's looking at your comments or your post if they don't comment or if they don't like something. And that could be the difference between them giving up that day, between the difference of them going to the gym, going to work. Could be the difference between them coming home and having a good experience with their kids or their wives or their husbands. So I want to just commend you for that, because I think it's important. And during these difficult times, I can't say it enough, because I fully believe it wholeheartedly, is the best way to mute negativity is just to outshine it with positivity, outshine it with uplifting stuff. So I appreciate you touching on that. And the following question, because I ask everybody, is if you have some parting words like that you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
Parting words, man. Going back to that last question, or the last comment that you made just about social media, one thing for anybody who's spreading positivity or anybody who's trying to spread a positive message, our job and what we're obedient to is spreading those seeds. And there's no guarantee that we'll see the harvest. We may not see anything grow from it, but I know for you, and I want to encourage you, because you may put up a post that gets 20 likes, 50 likes, whatever it is. But like you said, that one person who doesn't put the heart on there, doesn't write a comment about it, that's the person where next week or next month or next year, possibly, when they're going through a divorce, they're going through a tough time, they lost their job and they're in a dark place, they recall in their mind, they saw a post by No Quit Living, they saw a post by Christian Edwards, they saw a post by some of the people who are using social media for a greater cause, and they draw upon that message that they saw, and that's what it is that gets them back on track. That's what it is that motivates them. So I want to encourage you with that keep doing what you're doing, even when you don't see anything grow right away, possibly, because you never know who's being impacted years down the road.
I think that's a powerful message to end today's episode on. So, Christian, I truly, truly appreciate you spending some time with us, and I know that you and I will connect again soon.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you for listening to episode number 322. Christian touched upon some really powerful things today. I love the quote he shared, falling short versus stopping short. Christian spoke about being intentional, which is something that I think is extremely important. We discussed one of my favorite topics, spreading positivity on social media, and I would like to end today's episode with a challenge to our listeners. I challenge each and every single one of you, for the next 24 hours, no matter what, don't spread, share, like, or comment on anything that is negative. Instead, mute negativity by focusing and spreading positivity. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.